Embedding HTML into your PHP code is typically done when there is a large amount of PHP being used to generate dynamic output on a website. For instance, on an e-commerce site where you have one page serving the details for more than 1,000 products, it is more likely that you are going to have different ways that you want to format these products, depending on the information they are displaying. In this case, it may make more sense to embed the HTML within the PHP and then include this within the original HTML document. Let's examine this document. Immediately, you can see that the page starts with a PHP opening tag. This tells our web server that the first thing it has to do is send this page to the interpreter. The next block of code is printing out the top of the HTML document with the doc type, HTML head, and body opening tags. This next block of code below the body text is doing some stuff I do not expect you to have any idea about as of yet. It is, however, performing a very simple operation. First, we are loading a product record from the database based on a value that is passed into this PHP page. Next, you can see that we're printing out an image tag. However, you have these funny looking names in here. These are called variables, and the PHP interpreter will replace these variables with their true values based on the previous database call. We will go through variables and values in the next chapter. Next, we hit a statement that will print out different information depending on whether the width is greater than the height in the image or not. The important thing to notice here is how the HTML is embedded within the PHP tags, specifically within the print tags. The print statement will get interpreted, and that HTML will get passed back to the web server, which will then send that along to the web browser, where it is then interpreted by your web browser and shown to you as an HTML document. Did you notice that I just said that HTML is interpreted by your web browser? That's right. HTML is an interpreted language just like PHP, as is JavaScript. Your web browser, in this case, is the interpreter. The same as PHP, when a web browser receives HTML, it executes that, and the results are what are shown to you. That is why when you visit a web page with different web browsers, you could get different results. The web browsers may not interpret the HTML in the exact same way, producing different output. Fortunately, we do not have that problem with PHP. Since there's only one interpreter built by one company, it is interpreted the same way every time. Now, the code that you see here is not exactly the most elegant way to do it. If a designer were to come into this page, they would likely blow a gasket trying to format the HTML nicely. If I were working with a designer, I would most likely separate as much HTML from the PHP as I could, to give them the ability to edit the format without needing to learn PHP. To simplify this document, I would start by removing the head and the foot part of the HTML document from the PHP code. And we do this by taking our doc type, our body, everything else, and directly removing that from the PHP code block. Same with the footer. We take our closing body and HTML tags and placing them outside the PHP closing tag. I would then put the actual product display into a function, so it is separate from the display and can be called multiple times on a page if necessary. This is a procedure we'll become intimately familiar with once we cover the functions chapter. I would then put the actual product display function call, as I created here, into the page. We simply call it product display, and this is the variable that was passed into the web page. Our argument, as I explained earlier, what an argument was in a function. Now, what we have here allows a designer to come in and immediately recognize what HTML they can edit and what PHP they should not, if they do not understand how to. We could go further and separate all the HTML out and create dynamic tags for the designer to use in creating a site. But then we would be creating a content management system. We're not going to get into that this early in the game. So for now, what you need to remember is that PHP can be embedded within HTML, as in the previous movie, or it can generate HTML either in whole or in part, as we have just finished discussing. Next, we will cover what the semicolon is in relation to PHP, and why it is the most important character you will ever learn about.